welcome to Life an Inside Job. It's the podcast where we explore our inside lives and how to make them great places to hang out. My name's Kate. I'm a menopause mentor and writer, amongst many other things, and today I talk to writer and hypnotherapist Sophie Fletcher, whose book Mindful Menopause was published earlier this spring, and it is really helpful. We talk about how midlife and, of course, perimenopause gets squeezed at both ends by our parents, maybe aging parents at one end, and our kids at the other, both needing us in different ways. And we talk about the unique quality of the pressure this creates in this sandwich. Sophie brings all her lived and professional experience to this conversation and offers us loads of doable tips and practices to apply on our everyday lives using both mindfulness and hypnotherapy skills. Thank you, Sophie, for coming to chat to me. Today, what we thought would be interesting would be to talk about being in a sandwich generation.
Yes, yeah.
And it is a menopause sandwich.
Yes.
That tasty morsel.
Menopause sandwich, yes.
This is something that we all know about, the pressures of both the older and younger generation. Can you speak to the pressured menopause in the middle, the sandwich filling?
Sandwich filling.
You have to stop. I don't. Maybe too many food metaphors already, but let's add some egg and seasoning.
So, I think there's a lot of seasoning you can throw into this. Well, we've already used it there. Yeah, I think I mean, I'm 48 and I have elderly parents. Well, I'm not really, they wouldn't like me to call them elderly, to be fair. But I have parents who are in their 70s, and I have two teenagers as well, 16 and 17. And they all, that outside bit of the sandwich, I feel sometimes is pressing in on that big middle part of the sandwich. And there is a lot in the middle of the sandwich at the moment. So it's often that I feel I'm at a point where I'm ready to give myself more time, and I need to give myself more time. I know at one point I was really excited about, right, I'm going to meditate every day. I'm going to do all this great stuff to look after my own well-being. And this is what I teach people as well. And I know how important it is at this time in our lives. And then, I was just finding a nice steady little rhythm. And then everything else outside comes, you think you've got past the kids and everything, and it starts coming in from both sides. And I think when you're going through menopause and you may be lacking in sleep, your moods may be all over the place, you may not feel quite yourself, you may not sometimes feel as able to manage everyone else as well as yourself. And I think
you see, I feel so strongly. I had such a strong reaction about that because as I'm in second spring these days, but I don't want to manage anybody else.
Exactly.
They can go manage themselves. No,
exactly.
No.
Yeah. But that's what it's, you've got to get from that place where I think that's the birth of something. I think you're pushed into this place sometimes where you feel like you are still not really the manager of your kids. You're more like the consultant. I think I like to see it more as a consultant now. But I'm in that place, certainly in that place where I'm feeling that tug of being, I don't really want to do that anymore. But sometimes I feel I have to still. Yeah, it's like an in-between place. But then there's sometimes you have to, like with my parents, I have not managing them, but I have to be there for them. And that's the difference, I think. And I think when you're in menopause it depends where you are in your journey, Kate, I think. I mean, I'm 48, so I would say that I'm fairly kind of early in the middle-ish kind of, and I'm in that place where I am finding something's about to happen, something's about to burst open, and I don't want all that, and I'm feeling that tension between feeling those demands but actually not really wanting them anymore. It's enough.
Yeah. I'm going to make a bold statement. I'm going to be really bold here, and I would say that people in menopause need shed loads of time for themselves, and nourishment and softness, and to be away from other people. I think in all the menopausey people I've come across, this is a really common theme. So for anybody listening, if they're feeling like that, yes, this is normal and essential for our psychological growth. And then life has other plans. So what interests me, Sophie, is how you or how we can navigate this really chewy, sticky bit, owning our need for space and managing when you have to be there for other people.
Yes, and I think that's the tricky bit. And I have an exercise, not in my current book, but I have an exercise in my book for new parents around this actually, which I find really helpful. And it's called Glass Balls and Rubber Balls. And we're all juggling all of the time. And some of those balls are glass balls, and those are the ones you really can't drop. And the biggest glass ball of all is you. And so you've got these glass balls, but then there are rubber balls, and you have to think, what are the rubber balls? What can I drop that will come back or bounce back, or what? And so you have to, and there's a little diagram that you can actually fill in which are your glass balls and which are your rubber
balls. Tell us the name of your parenting book, please, Sophie. So
it's Mindful Mama. It's for the first year after having a baby. So, if you want the exercise, you can download it from the Penguin site if you wanted to do that little exercise for free. So
that's so generous. Thank you.
But yeah, so I use that exercise in my head. So I have a little person juggling in my head, and I'm always aware of which are my glass balls and which are my rubber balls. So I mean, I had a quick chat with you before coming on, and I've been juggling like 10-15 balls this month. I have had probably one of the hardest months I've ever had in my life this month, and for me, the glass balls are my tennis. I have to do my tennis every week. That is just I do my meditation every day before I wake up, before I get out of bed. That's really important. It's gone down to the plants in my greenhouse and my tomatoes. My veggie plots had to go a bit, but I keep a bit of that. I make sure I've got some of that. So it might be reducing things down, but making sure that there are little bits of those things that are important, even if I can't spend as much time on them. The one thing that really goes is social media. I get rid of that in times like this, and I just bring my energy back into, I literally retreat inside and back into my home. So I've got that space for myself. And then I've got the space for the people who need me in that moment as well. And just take it day by day and week by week. So I maybe have a plan for that week and then stick to day by day. So reduce it down. But definitely it's about retreating and looking after yourself, and which are your glass balls, which ones can you absolutely not drop. And you are one of those. So yeah, that's how I approach it anyway.
I think that it's also interesting to, quite often you can, if there are tasks, I'm such a grown-up, you know, I found there are some tasks in life that I have to do. It's like, oh, what, really? I have to do this? It's so like, being a grown-up is so tedious. I tell my children that. They don't believe me. They think they'll be liberated. But anyway, but very often it depends on how I do the task. So it's not just to pick a thing, it's not the washing up itself, it's the attention that I bring to the washing up.
Yeah.
So I can do the washing up resentfully because I'm washing up other people's scuzzy plates that they left under their bed, that are blah, 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 you know, and they have a whole story about me being a victim about it. And that is draining and exhausting and sets off a whole load of other repercussions in my family life. Or I can wash up feeling grateful that I have hot water, that I have the time to do it, that I have my mental health is good enough to be able to want to do it, to, you know, and then I feel buoyed up and filled again.
Yeah, absolutely. And the language, I mean, what I've been doing over the last month, because there are things I have had no choice, I have had to do. I've chosen to do them, but it's important to me that I did them. And when I do them, I say things like, I get to do this, I get to do that. Even if it's, like you say, the most, you know, something that I'm feeling pressured by, or someone's putting pressure, I stop and I think, so my mum's not going to listen to this, so I can say this on the podcast. It was my mum's birthday on Tuesday this week, and I said to her, instead of giving you a present, I'm going to offer you, I'm going to cater, do little nibbles and drinks for some friends of yours, so you can invite a few friends around, you don't have to worry about it, I'll make some lovely things and I'll wait on you, and you know, everything, that's my gift to you. And suddenly she's got 18 friends coming around, and it's full on catering for the evening. And so, you know, what was a lovely gift and intention suddenly felt quite onerous. and so she was so happy, and you know, I didn't want to burst her bubble, so I got on with it. But instead of feeling resentful, I was saying, I get to do this for my mum, I get to make her this meal, I get to meet her friends, I get to create a lovely evening for her. So I changed my language around it. So rather than feeling resentful about it, I thought I went into it with gratitude.
That is very skillful. And language is so powerful.
Yeah. As a hypnotherapist, and I mean, of course as you as a therapist, we know how powerful language can be, and the patterns we use as well, and our internal, not just the language we use externally, but our internal narrative and the dialogue that runs in our minds as well. So yeah, sometimes that is trickier, I think, when you're menopausal, because
as you so astutely said earlier, it's really easy when life is going smoothly.
Yeah,
it's really easy. It's comparatively easy to put in good self-care and meditation and tennis and whatever your thing is. It's relatively easy to make sure it happens. It's when the shit hits the fan that it's much harder.
Yes, it is.
So what can you offer for people, like emergency first aid, in terms of that kind of thing?
Well, I find
let's name it. A lot of menopause feels like an emergency for many people.
A lot of it does. Emergency first aid is language for me. I change my language immediately. I stop that negative internal dialogue with language like I get to.
Can you give us? I'm so excited. I'm chucking my phone on the floor. Can you give us some more examples of this fabulous languaging? I know that, well, we all need to go and buy your book, Mindful Menopause, because I know that you've written really eloquently about it in there.
Yeah, I think it's hard to do. I do it so unconsciously myself that it's hard to do it off the top of my head.
Okay.
But sometimes one of the things that I do, if I'm in very difficult place and my thoughts are running everywhere, I go out for a walk around the block, and it's as quick as having a cup of tea, or just a 5-minute walk, and I use the words, I am alive, I am home, I am alive, I am home, or breathe, I am alive. I've been on retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh, and I love his approach. It's just so gentle and so applicable to modern life. And so I love his affirmations and mantras, and so yeah, breathe, you are alive, or I am alive, I am home. And that just, you know, the fact, and I just, that helps me just come back into myself, and I just, it brings me right back into the moment. And I just think, yeah, I look at the leaves, I look at the flowers, and I think in this moment everything is okay, I'm alive in this moment. I look at, and I just bring it back to the tiniest things in that actual moment. And that for me just gives me a bit of perspective. And you know, and I just get through it moment, just walk with that and do a mindful walk based on that. And that for me is very quick and very easy as well. And tracks, if I'm in a really difficult place, like at the moment in the last month, I found it very difficult to keep up my meditation practice because I've been pulled in so many directions. And so I listen to guided meditations before I go to sleep at night. I might fall asleep while I'm listening to them, but it does make a difference. And it is quite passive as well, but it does help. It really, really helps. So for me, that's one of my go-tos. And I actually use the app Calm. I really love the sleep stories, the railways. I never thought I would. I thought, but something is just really hypnotic about those journeys, and especially at the moment. And so it's a bit of a getaway as well. It's not all about being mindful or changing habits and behaviors with hypnosis. Sometimes you just want to get away in your mind, and so I love that form. I find that very helpful. And I know that when you do those sorts of activities, your brainwaves slow down. And I think it's really important to do things like that, because when your brainwaves slow down, you are resting your brainwaves. So even if you're not sleeping, you're resting your brain. And that for me really works. And I think we all get so fixed on sleep and why sleep matters and why sleep is important. Everyone's focused on sleep. But for me, it's about rest. That's far more important. So it's about finding those moments of rest in the day. So it might be before I go to sleep if it's been a really busy day. It might be, like you said, when you're doing the washing up, or you're making a cup of tea, or you're filling the car up with fuel. You can rest your mind by just saying, I'm aware of the wind, I'm aware of the trains driving past, I'm aware of that car driving in, I'm aware of the weight of the nozzle in my hand. So you can rest your mind just by bringing awareness and being attentive in that moment. So I use those as quick fixes a lot.
That's really interesting. Can you, I'm, as you know, and I think you are too, we're a bit of a Nidra nerd.
Yes.
Can you say a bit more about resting the mind? Because if you know, that is just, if we're talking about being squeezed in our menopause sandwich on both sides by our younger people and our older people, or our bosses, or whatever kind of bread is in our particular sandwich, then these moments of mind rest are absolute diamond wonders, aren't they?
Absolutely. And it's something that I talk about in my mama book as well, because it's a similar pattern. It's just different. We kind of get fixed on sleep, and we don't think about rest. And all through our lives, our sleep changes, you know, for all sorts of different reasons. And we all have individual patterns and individual needs around sleep. And I think I do a lot of work using hypnosis around sleep. And people come to me and say, I am an insomniac, for example. So they identify as an insomniac. So my first thing, I remember one person came to see me once who themselves was an NLP practitioner. So they knew all about language and what narrative means. And they sat there and they said to me, I'm an insomniac. And I said to them, do you know what you just said to me? And they said, what did I just say? I said, you said I'm an insomniac. And they said, no, I didn't. And I was like, yes, you did. And so it's so interesting how we form those unconscious patterns around it. So first of all, I'd say if anyone is struggling with things like that, to step out of owning it as it's not part of you. It's something that is happening to you today. It's something that's happened to you today. And I get people to think about the difference between sleeplessness and insomnia. So I've had a sleepless night rather than saying I'm an insomniac. And also, and then get people to start thinking about rest as well. So for example, if I wake up in the middle of the night, and I do wake up regularly at around 3 to 4, I would never say I've had a bad night or anything. I never use that language. I would say, I call them my peaceful pauses, and I just get my meditation out and I just listen to a track, and I just rest my mind. I ran a half marathon a few years ago, and I was so nervous and I didn't sleep the night before, but I listened to tracks all the way through. I didn't think I slept, but I listened to tracks all the way through, and then I got up and I ran a half marathon. I was fine. And so I really believe that resting your mind is powerful. And during the day, when you do these little mindful moments everywhere, you're like you said, they're like diamonds. You're just collecting rest. And every little bit of rest, whether it's the 5 minutes filling up the fuel, your brain is benefiting from that in menopause. So I think for me, I don't worry about sleep, but I do make sure that I rest my mind as much as I possibly can throughout the day. And I grab those little moments wherever they are.
Yes, absolutely, like a sort of rain butt, collecting all the rain. Yeah, I'm very much of the same opinion, and in a similar way to how we can identify, we become the problem, we identify as the person with the sleep problem. We can also get very consumed, use a lot of energy in trying to fix it, and like obsessed with reading articles about whatever the issue is and Googling it, and then we'll receive an ad for that will fix the problem, and we become kind of, it's another form of depleting ourselves.
Fixated on fixing. And it's a form of depletion, and you just that energy, that constantly thinking energy is tiring, it's exhausting. And letting go of it is really being able to let go of it, making a choice to let go of it, learning ways to let go of it.
And I would say that is a process. That's a learned skill and an ongoing process.
Definitely.
It's not something that you can, oh well, I'm just going to let go of that. It's not that
it's
simple.
Definitely a learned process, and it's a practice. And with hypnotherapy, I always do letting go as part of my work. When I do a session with someone, we do a lovely letting go visualization to build on. But there is a letting go in one of the tracks for the book, just to let go of stress for the day and things like that, so you can let that go.
I think just like you do with your clients, we have to, as menopause people, we have to do that regularly. I mean, there's something about the insane irony, like thank you Mother Nature, all through, well, if you're lucky, all through your life you get to menstruate, yay, and you get to let go every month. Whoa, what a gift is that? If you've had that, and I acknowledge that people have many various experiences of menstruation, but there is the potential for every period to be a beautiful letting go. And then you come to menopause, which is the mother of all letting goes, when there is shed loads that you have to let go. And you don't get the periods anymore. It's not fair. I'm having a little toddler tantrum about that. Letting go, that's like the major task in menopause.
I think that's partly why I put the lunar stuff into my book, because I am still getting, I would say, fairly regular. I'm lucky in that respect, and my mother was right until the end as well. So she just opened her bedroom. She said she opened her bathroom cupboard one day, saw the Tampax and thought, oh, I haven't used those for a while, and that was it. And but I find using the lunar cycling really helpful as well. So letting
say
go.
more about that.
Well, I need to be better at it myself, to be honest with you. But I have an app on my phone that tells me where the moon is, and so as we come up to a full moon, it's an opportunity for letting go. So as we're on a waxing moon, we start to go into sort of more letting go and being able to let go. And the new moon again is building things up and setting new intentions, and that's that. So you can use that cycling of the moon to let go and to release, but also to set new intentions and goals as well. So you can mirror that cycle with what I just find it really grounding, really grounding. And also, I go out and I look at the moon as much as I can and see where the moon is at, and use the moon energy as well, because it just feels very feminine to me too. It just feels very connecting and just awe-inspiring. I just love the moon. And I feel very invigorated by it as well.
And how does that work if you're still cycling, if you still have a period? Because that's two different, unless your cycle coincides with the moon.
If I'm feeling wobbly, if I know where I'm in my cycle, but there's other stuff going on and I'm feeling a bit all over the place, and because my cycle isn't the same as it was, it has changed. So if I feel wobbly and I feel disconnected with my cycle, or something just feels out of sorts, then I'll connect with the moon, and I'll go out, what's going on with the moon? How can I use that energy to rebalance myself? So what can I do that's aligned with where we are in a lunar cycle to help support me where I am in my cycle? And it's interesting. I always like to look at where the moon is and where I am in my cycle as well, and what's happening. So I find that helpful.
One of the things that I notice is that, again, it's different for everyone. So the classic symptom is that things will get very intense. Everything will be intensified in the full moon, or that we'll want to be more sociable, or if you Google moon cycles, that tends to be this kind of like surface level stuff that we are told about. But actually people respond very, very individually, and I think that it also has to do with, just to make everything more complicated, because that's what I do. It also depends on what phase the moon was when you're born.
Yeah, I don't know as much about that. So
and that has a strong effect on our fertility. If you look up the work of Francesca Naish, who's an Australian fertility person, and she knows everything about this. What I would say is that it's really helpful to notice how we feel as the moon goes by, just in the same way as you would with your menstrual cycle, to track, well, in my premenstruum I tend to feel like this. The same with the moon, that to notice what actually happens rather than what we think ought to be, because the archetypal cycles are beautiful guides, but nothing beats our personal experience of where we are with it.
A good thing to do would be to take 1 month, one lunar cycle, and just to make a note every day of how you're feeling, just to make a note, just for 1 month, just to get started. That can be quite helpful, just to find where you are. But I always feel I actually feel quite tired on a full moon. I always find I feel very tired, for example. And there is evidence to show that people's sleep is disrupted around a full moon as well.
Absolutely.
So that's quite helpful for people to know.
And to know that it will pass too.
Yes. I said to my mum, has struggles to sleep sometimes, and I just said to her, she was going through a phase, I think, and I just said to her one day, well, maybe this is just your pattern this week. Maybe this is just your pattern for now. And she said that completely changed. She thought just saying that completely made her think, oh, maybe that is just my pattern for now. And maybe it will pass. It will pass. Not maybe, it will pass.
Mm.
And so yeah.
I wanted to sort of bring our conversation around to the kind of the emotional holding that we do as women.
Yeah.
And I think that society's expectations of the emotional labour, and how our expectations of ourselves to care for the sandwich, the other sides of the sandwich, can be our own worst enemy, really.
Yeah. I think, well, I'm feeling it a lot this month. I've talked to you about that. And so I've got, my parents are divorced, so I have separate demands from both my parents at the moment, differently as well. Not really demands, I wouldn't say. They're not demanding things of me, but there are things going on in our lives that need my time and my energy. And the same with my children at the moment as well. And so around that, I'm trying to draw boundaries around that, but due to what's happening, it's very hard to. And I think there are those times when you have that pressure and you do feel you have to give more. I'm also the eldest of 4 girls.
Oh,
so
birth order. I feel so sorry for you. I'm the youngest. I'm like, yeah, God, that was a great decision to be last. Oh my God, the eldest child.
Yeah, so I'm the eldest of 4 girls, so a lot does tend to fall to me, or has done. So trying to step away from that a little bit and spread responsibility is something I've been doing. I also have been doing certain things. We talked about resting mind and thoughts not running away and things like that. And I think with teenagers, you're moving out of that management consultant stage and kind of they're becoming adults now and they're leaving the nest, which can bring up all sorts of different feelings. That's a whole other podcast, I think, Kate. But also I use in the book, and I personally use this as a very simple sending and receiving sort of kind of meditation where my children will often be upset about something. There's a lot going on at the moment and they don't always want to talk about it, but they want you to be there. They want to kind of have you around, but they don't want to talk about it. And as a parent, it's getting out of that kind of I want to fix it thing is quite tricky sometimes. So I use a sending and receiving where I will just sit in the room with a book, may not be actually reading the book, but I just sit there with the book quietly. And I take a nice deep breath and I imagine my heart just full of love for my child. And then I imagine breathing that love to my child. As I breathe out, I breathe that love to my child. And then I imagine as they breathe out that any of their hurt or anything they're feeling comes through I have a filter where it comes back to me and I can filter. It's almost like I visualize filtering that hurt through my heart and then breathing out love to them again. And that's just really nice. I can just sit there and hold the space, but I'm also just focusing on my breath. So my thoughts aren't running away with me. And I'm sure that they can feel that energy. I really believe that they can feel that energy. And it's just really calming. And I strongly believe that if you're calmer as a parent, your child feels that. And my children do say to me, oh, Mum, you're so calm. You've got such a calm voice. And I'm not always, don't get me wrong, but that's a technique that I would use in situations like that. If you've got teenagers and things like that, can be really helpful to do that.
So beautiful. That's so beautiful. Thank you. Is it like Tom Len? Is that have I said that right? The meditation practice, Tom Len?
Yeah, that's well, I just call it sending and receiving. I learned it from my mother.
Beautiful.
So if it's called something else, but my mum taught that to me.
And also you're I absolutely agree to be a calm parent to try and be calm is like the best thing. But also in, in the reels, we're helping them to regulate their nervous system.
Yeah.
And that is I think that's a major parenting task.
Especially in teenagers, especially as they're going to adulthood and the prefrontal cortex is still forming and they're building up that aspect of self-regulation. It's a crucial time, and so techniques like that can just and even with these sorts of tools with very young children. I mean, I had someone get in touch with me recently who'd used I have a rapid relaxation tool I use a lot when it's in the book that's brilliant for first aid, which is breathing in. You breathe into the count 3, 2, 1, and you breathe out to relax, relax, relax. And you condition your response to that. So every time you hear it, your body and your mind relaxes. So there's a strong association with it. And I teach that to mothers when they are giving birth as well. And lots of them use it through the first year and onwards. And one woman got in touch to say she used it to calm her child. So she'd say 3, 2, 1, relax, 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 but also to calm herself when her baby was crying a lot. And then when her child was 2, she just came out with the words 3, 2, 1, relax, relax, relax. And it was her way of self-regulating. And she said, oh, it just helps me or something like this. And I just thought, you can teach kids, even and it's teenagers. I think you've got a real opportunity, even if you've never done all this stuff before. When they're teenagers, you've got a real opportunity to teach them things like this by using tools like that.
Okay, I have another juicy question.
Yes.
Okay, so you talked about setting the boundaries.
Yeah.
Can you help us with language to use for the other people when you're helping to set the boundaries?
What you mean?
Well, basically, when you're saying no. How do you say
no?
How do you say no nicely, Sophie, without pissing everybody off?
You can start with little things like if you're making a cup of tea for yourself and one of your children comes in and said, oh, can you do this for me? You say, I'm just finishing making my cup of tea. So rather than stopping making your own cup of tea and going to do what they want you to do straight away, you finish making your cup of tea. You do what you were doing for you. So you finish what you've started, even if it's a tiny thing like a cup of tea. And those people that are listening, I wonder how many people do that. Say, oh, I'll make the cup of tea later. Yeah, I'll come and do that.
I'm laughing because I go, no, I'm making my tea. I'm like the other way.
So you're right the other side.
Calm down, Kate. Calm down. Everybody gets upset.
If you find it hard to say no, those are good places to start looking after yourself. I think just being aware of when you stop doing things for you in order to start doing things for other people. So first of all, I'd say spend a week just noticing when you put down what you're doing before you finished it and going to do things for other people. Just spend a week noticing that. And once you've done that, then you actively start thinking about, no, I'm going to finish this. And then I'm going to do that. And you tell them that that's how it is. And if they huff and puff and slam a door, then that's their problem. It's not yours. And you can develop little affirmations around this as well for yourself, saying, for example, I'm doing what's important for me right now. Or you can just write little phrases, and I have little sticky notes if I'm going through certain phases, I'll put a sticky note up to remind me, and I'll write it down so it's there in front of me all the time. So say no would be if there's a week of practicing saying no, I'd have say no stuck on my computer, and then it's just leveling it up really. And I booked a retreat. I booked a retreat a couple of years ago, just before lockdown, and I just said to my husband, I'm going away for 3 days. And I was like, what? You can't? I said, I am. That's it. I booked it. And the first time that I think things really turned around for me was a good few years ago now, when I was probably in my early 40s, and I started, so right the other end of where you are now, Kate. And I hadn't seen my sister for years, and she lived in Australia. And the kids needed me, my husband needed me, and I was like, I can't go, Mum. I can't go. There's too much to do here. And she said, Sophie, just book the bloody ticket. We'll sort everything out. So I booked the ticket and then faced the wrath. I was like, oh, going to Australia. And I said, yeah, I'm going to Australia. I just booked the ticket and did it. And I apply that principle. I tend to, that's a good thing. If you book something, if you want to do something, just book it. Everything will work out. You just do it. So I have that philosophy now. If I really want to do something, I just book it, and then everything else will fall into place. But yeah, start out small with small things. Just notice where you're giving up your own needs for other people's. Then you start saying no, and then you go on to the big stuff. So
that is so smart. A very wise friend said to me back when my second child was quite small, so I was like really in the mothering zone. She said I was kind of pretty envious, really. She was always going off to Ibiza with her mates and getting drunk and running around and having a good time, and I was at home. Scraping sick off the floor. It's like, what? This is not right. So I said, how do you do that? And she says, you have to train their expectations.
Yeah.
So if we're always there and always leaving the cup of tea to go and take care of the homework or the lost whatever, then that's their expectation.
Yeah. And it's never too late to set different expectations. I think that's the important thing to know. I mean,
right, I'm off to book that ticket to Australia now. I'm off.
Do it. But it was so liberating. Oh my gosh, because my husband works in London, so he commutes quite a long way every day. And so I did feel very like I had to be at home for the kids all the time. And so that ticket to Australia, it was the start of a new journey. It was like, wow, this whole new world quite literally was opening up. And but yeah, setting those expectations, definitely, and knowing that actually, like, if people can get on quite well without you, you can, if they have to.
It requires us to let go of controlling as well.
Yeah, it does.
And that's another thing.
Yeah, so when I came back from Australia, everything was in the wrong cupboards, and the airing cupboard was a mess, and everything, I couldn't find anything. But that was, that's part of accepting that people do things differently, and you can't control everything, apart from letting go.
Sophie, you've been really, really generous in your tips and advice, and there is so much more in your book, Mindful Menopause, and it's really soothing and calming, and you have such a wonderful tone. It felt like being hugged when I read it. So I would definitely say go and buy Sophie's book, because it's very, very good.
Thank you.
But I'm going to ask you for more, because I'm a greedy bugger. Can you give us insatiable? Can you fill us up even more with a top tip for the sandwich generation, please?
Gosh, let me think.
I've bled you dry.
It's probably, I think, the word that comes to mind when I think of my dad and my mum. I think of my two children, because they're the four who I've had to be. I think the word in the center of everything, I see it in my mind, I see it like a wheel, and the big spoke in the middle. You've got the spoke and you've got the hub in the middle. And for me, the hub is love. And it always comes back to your heart and your breath and love. And I might get quite teary. But if I just breathe and I imagine my heart opening up, and just everything is love. And my mum always talks about heart-opening tears. I never think tears are sad, because my mum's always called them heart-opening. And yeah, and for me, that's what it is. It's all about love. It's all about your heart. And so if I think of all of them around me, like on a wheel, and sometimes someone's going to need me more than the other person, they'll be at the top of the wheel, but their needs are always there on the wheel, but someone's going to be higher up than someone else all the time. But the thing turning that wheel all the time is love and my breath. That's what it comes back to. So if you just the mantra, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, and just imagine love at the center. Like, I'm quite visual like that, so that's what I would say. That's my takeaway, is just remember that heart, breath and love is really the anchor in everything.
Oh, now I will teary too. Have a little weep. What was that? Love? I'm kind of in love with your mum as well. She's kind of special, isn't she?
Yeah, she's we had a
Heart-opening
difficult relation
tears.
growing up. So anyone who's having a difficult relationship with their daughter, we had a very difficult relationship until I was in my 20s, and she went off on a Buddhist retreat for a year. And we were all living very separate lives, my sisters, my mum, and we all went off and did our own thing. And my mum's trained now as a person-centered counsellor, specialist in mindfulness. One sister's got a master's in mindfulness and is a nurse, got a PhD in complexity theory. My other sister's a yoga and therapist in Satyananda yoga.
Oh wow, it's a family business.
So we all kind of went our separate ways. It was very weird, and came back together. And yeah, and my mother is, she lives very locally, and she's great. So we all have a lot in common, and we're all like therapists around the table. So when we all get around the table, it's very interesting.
Thank you very much, Sophie.
Thank you, Kate. Really lovely to chat.
Sophie's new book is called Mindful Menopause, and you might want to check out her other excellent books. There's one on preparing for birth called Mindful Hypnobirthing, and one for the early years of parenting, which is called Mindful Mama, and they're all packed with advice and ideas, and also downloads and tracks with Sophie's warm, helpful, calming voice and these great strategies for real life. And you can find out more about Sophie and her work, her one-to-ones and online courses at mindfulmenopause.co.uk. I'd love to hear your responses to being in this sandwich. How are you doing with it? Please do pop over to Instagram at Kate_Codrington, where you can join in the conversation. If you've enjoyed this episode, if it's been helpful and interesting, then I would really appreciate it if you could share it with a friend or with your communities on social media. And don't forget to join me again soon for another exciting adventure into the inside world.